Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the country, around the world, around the state, around the city. Welcome to another episode of the Silk Stocking Sisters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Theresa J, Canada. And today we have a special guest. As you know, all my guests are special. Miss Lillah Penddah. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. If not, she will definitely let me know, okay? So today we have a special guest. And let me tell you a little bit about her before we get started. She was born and reared in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And that's my last name, but I have nothing to do with Canada, okay? That's my last name, all right? So here I have someone who's from Canada, and I'm not from Canada. So this is going to be really interesting. She owns her own business, developed a game, and was a TED Talk speaker. So she has a lot of exposure and experience that she's going to share with you today. So hopefully we're going to be talking about specifically her situation growing up in Canada, navigating school as a minority in a predominantly white space. That's the focus of today's topic. So with having said that, I'm going to introduce myself and yourself to Lillah.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, your experience and, what you've done, like the business you have, if you want to briefly talk about the things you're involved in, your game you developed, and the topic of your TED Talk.
Okay. So my company is called AFRO FACTS. I'm the CEO and founder, and we create educational tools played as games to assist people with increasing their awareness with respect to Canadian Black history. And then through its context, we teach the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And this was something that was born out of my own experiences growing up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, going through all of my education, and most often being the only Black person in the room, if not being maybe one of five in an entire school setting. So when I finished my educational journey, I just had a little bit of an epiphany, realizing that I had learned nothing about Black history. And that just felt really odd for me, being Black myself, that I knew nothing about the history of the people that looked like me in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And any pieces of Black history that I happened to learn happened to be American-based, because there would annually be commercials for Black History Month during February that were American-based commercials. And that's something I wanted to take on and create a solution for, because I knew how important it was to have that education and to realize that no aspect of our Canadian education was including that at the time. And the why, not understanding the why behind it, was something that really drove me in that direction.
Wow. Okay. So basically, can I ask this question? Were your parents born in Canada as well?
No, my parents are both from Ghana, and they immigrated to Canada in the 70s.
Oh, wow. That was interesting. Okay. So did you speak the language? Did you grow up speaking the language?
I sure did not. And
Are you kidding me?
now.
Really? Oh, well, I have a secret. My first visit to Ghana was in 2017.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes. And I was renamed, I belong to a village now in Ghana. I can't remember it right now. I didn't know we were going to talk about this. If I had known we were talking about it, I would have told you the name and everything. But anyway, they some people decided they didn't want to be renamed, so they renamed certain people. And the person who was actually doing the ceremony, she said she was the Queen Mother. And when it came to my turn to get me given a name, she said, "I'm giving you my name." I'm like, oh my goodness, this is huge. Okay, so now I have to return to Ghana and go back and visit the village that I now belong to. So this is really interesting.
So are you yourself Ghanaian?
No.
Okay.
No. But I'm just saying that was just, I've always like I said, I knew growing up, I knew somebody from Ghana.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
Yes.
no, I've heard magical things. My intention is to go back, especially now having far more of a draw and an understanding of Black history
Right.
and the role that Ghana played within
Yes.
Black history as well.
Big deal. It's a big deal.
Mhm.
Okay. It's a big deal. I went to it with a group, and the person who led the group was a personal friend. And also he's a professor. He's a former college president twice. And so basically I said, let me go with this group because I want to go. I can't keep postponing this. And it was a fabulous experience, but it's interesting. People there thought I was Ghanaian.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
So I was just like, shocked when the Queen Mother said, and I'm giving you my name. I think it's um, Oshawa. I can't remember, but I just couldn't believe it. And I have a video of it for ceremony. So I can't, I
That's
look at it once in a
amazing.
while. Yeah. So it's interesting. So we have to catch up on that a little later. Okay. So anyway, let me just ask you about the TED Talk. What was the focus of TED Talk?
So yeah, I was blessed with the opportunity to do a TED Talk. I personally love public speaking, so any opportunity to do that, I'm all about. And in Edmonton, there was a chapter that was focusing on women. And so I got a chance to give a speech that really just spoke to my experiences being a Black woman in Canada, growing up, and how not growing up around people that look like me really spurred me into action in creating my educational tools. And within that journey, although I didn't have peers that look like me, I had an amazing friend group that I happened to be blessed with at the time. And they really created space and held space for me to teach them about Black history. And so my game today, I certainly wouldn't be at the point that I'm at had they not been there. And so it really speaks to the power of community, whether that community looks like you, that carries a certain level of power, but then also when you're able to find chosen community at the same time, whether they look like you or not, being able to hold space for others so that you have that opportunity to hear about different experiences, and then you're able to learn through the lens of those experiences.
As opposed to not having exposure at all, correct?
Sorry?
As opposed to not having any exposure at all.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And that's why I'm saying you're saying things, you're sharing with us how it's in ways in which you can do this, whereas people feel, for example, oh, I can't be with this person because they, I'm different from them, or they won't understand me, or so different kinds of viewpoints. But you're explaining ways in which you were able to adapt and be able to do that to help you to be more inclusive in your life. Am I correct?
Yeah, it presented me with an opportunity to, because I wanted to teach myself as well as teach my friends. So a couple different things were gained through that was one, getting an education for myself, learning about what Black history was, and really filling that hole that I was feeling within my own personal identity. And then also getting to learn about the things that when you learn about that minority experiences, the positives and the negatives, what you learn about the human condition at the end of the day, what an unconscious bias is, what a stereotype is, what a microaggression is. And then it presents you with opportunity to reflect on your own behaviors and take a look at how you might unknowingly be contributing to systemic racism. And really, the biggest draw for me was, what if? What if we had been given that opportunity to learn about these concepts at a far younger age, rather than learning about them as young adults? It would give us more time to internalize that information and apply it to how we treat people in the world, at the same time developing our critical thinking when we are presented with, say, the versions of history that are being taught in the classroom on a regular basis. And the beauty of this is it doesn't just apply to Black history. This applies to Indigenous history. This applies to Jewish history. It applies to those histories that have been traditionally hidden or altered to only present one perspective. There is such a beauty and a wealth in learning all of the information, because at the end of the day, history is there to teach us to learn from our mistakes. But how can we learn from those mistakes?
You don't know the history.
The truth.
Okay, but let me just refer back to something you just mentioned. When you thought about doing this, going through this process and trying to focus in on this area, what do you think it made a difference that you found out later or early in life? Were you able to think about if this happened to me, like you mentioned already, if it happened to you later in life, do you think you're more able to deal with it younger than it is when you're older? What are your thoughts?
That's a great question. And I think had it been learned about it earlier on, it would have changed the sense of feeling othered. It would have given more comfort to, even though I wasn't around Black people, to hear the stories of Black people. I didn't have that. I wasn't around Black people, and I didn't get the chance to hear those stories. The difference when I was creating my game and learning about it, it was like drinking from a fountain hose, or like drinking from a fire hydrant, I should say. A lot was coming at me. I am still the only Black person in my friend group that was doing all of this. So it was a lot to have to digest as a singular individual, not necessarily having an outlet with which I could discuss the information that I was learning. Because as I was learning that information, my perception of the world was changing naturally, as it would. I was now able to see those concepts in action. I was now able to see how I myself would unintentionally allow things to slide because I didn't know what they were. I didn't know what a microaggression was. I didn't know what an unconscious bias was. And when you learn that all at once in a short span of time, regardless of your age, that is a lot to sit with, a lot to have to reconcile with yourself, because there's definitely going to be an aspect of you that's sitting in I coulda, shoulda, woulda, whereas it really has to be about from this moment onward. But you definitely have a moment of saying, well, I shouldn't have let this go. Why didn't I speak up? Why didn't I do that? Now, from that moment, I've been able to dive even deeper, going past just the history and really looking at people's individual responses to racial stress and some of the regular and consistent behaviors that we encounter when we're having those what we consider to be uncomfortable conversations with people. And so I have been blessed with that opportunity, which allows me to be able to navigate those kinds of conversations with more confidence and know-how. But again, I would say it's better to have learned it earlier. Had I learned it earlier, and again, not just for me as an individual, for all parties involved, everyone around me, and just as human beings, if we had learned it earlier and learned about the mistakes made in the past, we can do things differently. And then you start to instill those behavioral patterns in kids. So that way, it's not just up to the adults to call out behaviors, which is already a challenge in and of itself at all.
Right.
You now have the youth calling out behaviors when they see them. So you have a greater opportunity to change those behaviors in others. As adults, we are habitual. We are a little more set in our ways because of time. So even when we were presented with opportunity to have someone call us out and say, hey, you've committed a microaggression. Hey, you've said something that's ignorant or offensive and maybe you don't realize it. It might be a larger learning curve for us to change those behaviors.
Right.
Whereas if you're in the classroom, you're in school on a regular basis, you're around a bunch of kids all the time, and you have more than one person calling that behavior out on a regular basis, not only are you modeling behavior to other individuals, but you are being presented with more opportunities to say, hey, you can't do that. That's not right. That's not okay. So that behavior change is going to come a little bit faster because you're in an environment that is going to be less tolerant of it. Whereas adults, we are more inclined to be like, well, what do you mean? No one's ever told me that before. You're one person out of my whole life. Why should I believe you? And that's where we get stuck. Whereas it doesn't need to be a huge group of people telling you that you've said something ignorant. It really only takes the one person, and then it comes down to what you do with that information. Do you take that opportunity to reflect and ask yourself, okay, what if this person is right? Maybe I should do more research. Maybe I should get curious and ask questions. But instead, what we most often tend to do is get defensive. And when we get defensive, everything stops in its tracks. We're no longer listening. We're no longer taking in the information. And we're going to be far less inclined to make a behavioral change because we're too busy being stuck in our ego of, well, there's no way I'm wrong, because if I was wrong, someone else would have told me at some other point in time, or who's this person over here? Or what I've encountered recently is like, if someone happens to be not a member of a minority group, but they're telling another person, hey, what you've said is offensive or racist or microaggressive, some people are less inclined to believe them because they're not a member of that minority group.
Right. That's
so there's a whole lot more at play, whereas kids don't have as much of that at play, and they're just more inclined to listen because someone's telling them something. So it kind of, pros and cons.
But my thing is, what you're saying to me is that you have to still be educated about it. So even for the younger group of children, they need to be educated about it before they can do something about it. So
yes, absolutely.
That's the key. All right. So that's my thing. Like I said, if my book talked about experiences, that was a fourth grade. That was early age. So people were more exposed to things as opposed to waiting. And I've said that before in other situations where it's better to learn earlier than it is later on.
Absolutely.
But the key, though, is that if you don't get the education about these things you just discussed, it's a moot point. It doesn't matter what age it is. Am I correct?
Exactly. We're all in a position to be ignorant. We are all in that position because we weren't given those opportunities to learn about these things in the past. So if you take a look at the world today,
Yes.
as it is, this is a product of not having learned that. The generation of tomorrow, they have a little more of an opportunity to make a change because more of that information is coming to them. Even though it might not be standardized in the classroom in a way that is truly equal to other subjects, now we've got social media. We've got people sharing their experiences. We've got people being more aware in general of those things, of those concepts. So the likelihood of seeing that behavior change comes with the generation behind us. Doesn't mean we can't do anything in this generation currently right now. Just means it's a larger shift that we have to turn.
But Lillah, listen, my question to you then is this. I've seen this play before, okay? All right, I'm just saying that I think many people ignored, they could have learned, but they ignored the experience. If you can avoid having to be uncomfortable, you see, this is what I'm saying. It's okay, but as long as it doesn't bother me, I'm okay. But don't disrupt my situation. And
100%.
So that's what many people. I mean, so I think the same thing is occurring. It's going to start occurring again because people don't want to be uncomfortable. So they're not going to share. They're not going to educate. They're not going to talk about different things. Okay. So is that going to make a difference? So what's going to make the difference here? If people decide to keep to themselves.
I would challenge that point. I think people are going to share. I think there is more of a craving for it. And it kind of just depends on the circle in which you run. I would encourage people to take a look at their own individual circle of people. And one, assess, is it diverse? Do you have a mix of different ethnic backgrounds in your own circle of friends, the circle that you hang out with on a regular basis? If yes, great starting point. If not, ask yourself why. What's going on there? And then if you don't, consider the fact, consider the possibility, let me say it like that, that because you don't, there might be information that you are missing about the world.
Well, now I'm going to get a little deeper here. There are populations of individuals from different ethnic groups who choose not to associate because of societal ills. All right.
Yep.
And so it's not like they don't want to, but they've been socialized to remove themselves or not associate. So, that's something that we cannot control that. If they've been socialized, well, don't speak with that person. Don't believe me, I know. And so they don't speak to the person. They don't sit next to them. They don't associate. I mean, literally, there are people now who have never been in a home of someone who wasn't like them.
Yes. It's not untrue. So this is why I put such a focus on the school system, because generally speaking, we put our children in school with the intention that they learn. So if they're not getting it at home, which is a very real possibility, it happens regularly. I have a lot of people when I'm facilitating my game, I get a lot of students that say, hey, I'm from a small town and this is the first time I've been exposed to these different members. Absolutely. We cannot control what they do in their home, but we can certainly have an impact on what they learn in the classroom and what the curriculum contains. That is where our opportunity lies, is in that curriculum. And here's the thing. Think about how long children are in school. When we go from kindergarten up to grade 12, right there, 13 years of education before they then go to college or university. So within that 13 years, one has to beg the question, why aren't we touching on this? Why aren't we touching on this regularly? And it doesn't necessarily have to just be Black history. No. Right now in Canada, there's a huge focus on truth and reconciliation because we live on Indigenous lands. And yet, I can say for myself, when I was in school, I did not hear a lick of information about the
tribal things and so forth and so on.
Oh, okay. You're gonna have to cut this part out. What is it called? Not reform schools, the residential schools, about residential schools.
Right. Okay.
And again, why? Why would we not learn about something so important and impactful to an entire group of people that were here before we were? I'm learning about residential schools just maybe over the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to see that information be captured in the school curriculum a little bit.
Little
We're
bit.
still certainly far from the goal, but it begs the question, who's making that decision of what gets in and what gets out? And imagine if we touch on, say, the Indigenous history one year, another year we dive a little bit deeper into Black history. Another year, we can take a look at Asian history. Like, you look at the calendar now, and we have so many different months of recognition. That's an easy opportunity to just follow the calendar and create diverse learning in the school system just based on the calendar alone. And yet we're not always tapping into that resource. So the school is where we really have that chance.
Okay, so basically this is leading to your discussion about, tell us the strategies that you talk about for creating inclusive educational environments.
Oh gosh.
Give me one strategy, at least one.
One strategy, I would say, well, first, we've got to have resources for teachers, because what I have found through my own experiences, it's not a lack of teachers wanting to teach the subject matter. Okay. There's certainly a want. Now, I don't know about the teachers in the US, but I definitely know the teachers here. They are doing God's work. They are doing God's work. Being a teacher isn't necessarily a high-paying job. It is a passion project that these people show up to every day, not getting paid enough, working in conditions that are subpar, and yet they come back every day. Why? Because they love the kids. They love what they do. They love the impact that they're able to have. So if we want teachers to be able to continue to do this amazing work that they're doing right now with minimal resources, we need to provide them with those resources to be able to teach that subject matter. That is where my game came in, because it's really a prepackaged product that teachers are able to utilize to provide that education. You have some teachers that are like, I want to do this, but I don't want to do any harm. I'm concerned about saying the right thing. And so that really leads to a little bit of paralysis through analysis. On top of that, because it's not always a formal part of the curriculum, so something that says, hey, these are what the subjects you have to teach, these are the learning objectives, and then we test on it, it becomes something that becomes optional. So it's up to the teacher to decide whether they include it or not. And if they do, they then have to decide, how do I go about including it? So you're putting a lot of onus on the individual teacher rather than on the curriculum or the school system as a whole.
Well, then let me ask this question. Tell us again, that is the game available in the States or only in Canada?
So right now, the game is technically available internationally because we have the beauty of Zoom and and just virtual in general. And so right now, I facilitate the game because it's not just about playing a game, getting a question right, and moving on to the next question. I provide additional context. So anytime a question is answered correctly or even incorrectly, I provide the contextual history information. So that way they learn about why this is important, how we even got there, and it really becomes a fulsome education. On top of that, we also include some very specific diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging questions that are designed to push the individuals that are playing in the same way a loving grandmother would push you because she knows you can do better. A lot of people haven't had an opportunity to think about some of these topics. As you said, a lot of people sit in the space of, well, if it doesn't impact me or someone I know, I'm not going to think about it. There's no reason for me to learn about it. And so within the game, the way I've structured it is that there are some questions that are designed specifically to put you on the spot, but in a comfortable manner. It is really a structured discomfort that we provide so that people can get a taste, but not be so uncomfortable that they run away. Because at the end of the day, we have been socialized to believe these topics are uncomfortable. They really aren't that terrible. But we've been taught to, oh, you don't talk about that. Oh, we shouldn't say anything about, oh, don't say that in this group. No, it's like any other subject you would ever talk about. It's just, if you take away the discomfort, then it's just a conversation. Think about when you buy a pair of shoes. If you pick the wrong size, it's uncomfortable. But then maybe if you wear it a few times, you work it in, you break it in, now it fits you like a glove. So the more
I'm sorry, but if I don't get the right size, forget it. It's not going to work. But I understand what you're saying. The concept, I understand completely the concept. So what advice would you give people who want to maybe think about pursuing the things that you've discussed and about your game, what would you give? What kind of advice would you give them?
I would encourage them to lean into their discomfort because the discomfort's only momentary. And on the other side of that discomfort lives growth. And isn't that what we're all seeking at the end of the day? Is growth and education? You're going to be a better person for having that awkward conversation because
Yeah.
guess what? You're not going to make the same mistake again. On the flip side of that, consider this for yourself. If I'm your friend or your family member or someone you care about, and I've come to you and said, hey, you've said something that I don't think you realize carries another message or maybe has offended me or is offending others. Do you want to continue that behavior and continue to hurt people unknowingly? Or do you want to hear about that mistake so you can learn from it and move forward in a better way? Think about how we teach children. It's the
Yeah.
exact same concept. And yet, as adults, we seem to be more resistant to it.
Yeah, because we stuck in your, like I said, stuck in your own ways. That's what people always stuck in my own way. So, let me, I've lived like this long, leave me alone. So I understand that, but I support I support you in saying that yes, I believe the earlier the better. And I emphasize that because of my own personal experience and also the fact that research I do in early childhood education that
Yeah.
early child that you don't wait till a person's 15, okay,
Yes.
and you expect, oh, why is this person not doing this? And why does this person not understand this? Why this person doesn't know that? Well, you should start it when they were 6 or 7, 8 years old. That's why.
I would also say that education starts at home. You don't necessarily, we put a lot of emphasis on, oh, the school system's going to teach my child everything they need to know. And then we throw them out into the world.
Good
When
point.
really, it starts at home. Think about those behaviors that your child picks up just from their parents because they're seeing behaviors that are modeled to you. Children are not born racist.
They
That's
learn it.
earned behavior.
Learn behavior.
Absolutely.
We all know that. And thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that because it kind of confirms what I talk about in terms of how we need to educate and educate at an earlier age because it'll
Yeah.
change the society as a whole. We don't wait till a person turns 25 years old and say, oh, here's so and so. How do you know about this ethnic group? How do you know about this language? But and already at that point, they're already stuck in their own ways, quote unquote, right?
It just
So,
becomes a bigger ship to have to turn.
yes.
It's still certainly possible. I don't want anyone thinking that I don't have hope.
Right.
I have hope in you all. But it just becomes a bigger ship to turn, and it comes down to that individual's want. And when we get older, trust and believe, a lot of us don't like to be uncomfortable. Even if it's for a second, we will take the easy road of, well, no, I'm not going to change my thought process. This is all I've ever known. I don't know what's on the other side, but I'm going to stay over here because this is what I'm comfortable with.
They're comfortable and it feels safe. Am I correct?
Yes.
Well, Miss Lillah, I'm so happy to have you on to talk about this, and I can't wait to find out about the game. And hopefully people reach out to you to have speaking engagements in the States, not just in Canada.
Thank you.
So thank you again for this wonderful discussion. And of course, I'm looking forward to us talking about this later on. Is that okay?
Oh, excellent. No, I appreciate that. Just to give a little bit of my information, if you are interested, I love to speak on the topic. I do keynotes, we do workshops, we do different panels, just really present different ways for people to get an education, whether it is about Black history or just how to have those conversations in a comfortable way, how to navigate that, whether you're in the workplace or just out and about living your life. You're definitely able to find out information at our website, afrofacts.ca, or you can even find us on Instagram at afrofacts _edu.
Got it. Okay. And I'll for the YouTube, we'll have the descriptions as well. So we'll make sure you have that. Okay. Sounds great. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to say goodbye to my audience. So thank you everyone for being here for another episode of Silk Stocking Sisters podcast. And we'll see you next time. Have a good day. Bye everyone.